And hello and welcome to another episode of Diamonds and Duds.
Hey everybody, this is episode 3. As we mentioned last time, this time we're doing They Live. At one point was on Peacock, so sorry about anybody who was like, hey, we'll go to Peacock to watch this, and then it's like, hey, they lied to us, it's not there. But spoiler, it's well worth the watch. If anybody, because I'm sure at this point most of the people listening are family, friend, anybody who hasn't watched this movie, I don't want to speak for Charles because we haven't talked about this yet, but watch this movie.
Yeah, and then I'm Charles Baker.
Oh yeah, we probably should say our names. This is Ivan Baker, his brother.
So first off, we're going to do a synopsis. Also, spoiler alert for a movie that is multiple decades old at this point, and yeah, you should have already seen this movie.
We should have already seen this movie.
This is true. I had seen a couple I had seen the last 30 seconds of the movie, ironically.
Yeah, because I think what it was is that this movie was made in '88.
Yeah.
As kids, this is before we really had. We maybe had HBO. I remember HBO being a really big thing when Dad got, but who knows if this was even on then. But at that point, I would have been 9, and you probably would have been, what, 7? So our parents would not have let us watch this.
No. I just remember, I think I caught like the last 30 seconds once, we'll get to it at the end. I'll say at the point that I'd seen. But I just caught the very, very tail end of the movie.
The only part that I had seen before this was not when I was a kid. It's when I was browsing on TikTok. Let's just say they had the most famous scene has popped up there a number of times. We'll mention it when we get to it, but I'm sure everybody listening already kind of probably knows what we're talking about.
So, synopsis. They influence our decisions without us knowing it. They numb our senses without us feeling it. They control our lives without us realizing it. They live.
This was made in 1988, and this is a John Carpenter film. And one of the things, there's a whole slew of John Carpenter films, to be honest, I think we haven't, obviously we've seen The Thing, we've seen Halloween, we've seen kind of his
Escape from New York.
Escape from New York. I saw the remake of The Assault on Precinct 13. I don't think he did that one. I think he did the original one. But there's a whole host of his stuff that, to be honest, we haven't seen. Yeah. Not for any particular reason other than that we just didn't think to watch it.
Yeah.
So that was directed by him. One of the things I found interesting, he wrote this also, which I think is probably something common for him. The thing I thought was very interesting, it was also written by someone named Ray Nelson.
Okay.
This is his only writing credit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I found very weird because this is an extremely well written movie. Yeah. Not just, hey, this is an action movie or whatever, whatever, action thriller, super sci-fi. It's a good, and we've said this before in our life. Yeah. This is a good movie. Yeah. You know what I mean? This is not just a good, good side. This is a good, actual, well-written. So who knows what his life was or whatever, but I found it very interesting that this is the only credit he had was writing this.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool. That's a really cool fact. I wonder what he did afterward. Yeah. So, and one thing I noticed about obviously, Roddy Piper is our main star, in it.
Yep, and we also had, as far as some of the key cast that people would know. Why can I not remember his name? Because he's been in everything.
Keith David.
That's the guy I was looking for. I love Mr. Keith David. I also love him in, Saints Row?
Yeah.
I love his voice in Saints Row. The other thing I found interesting is the female in there, Meg Foster. Did you recognize what she was from?
Oh, I looked it up.
Okay, yeah.
I looked it up.
Evil Lynn.
Yeah, for Masters of the Universe.
which continues our having things related to Masters of the Universe.
That's right.
Which is really, the Dark Crystal. One of I forget what the link was there.
Yeah.
The beginning of this, it kind of centers on Roddy Piper as he's kind of walking down, walking into town.
Yeah, he's directed kind of looks like he's looking for work, going from town to town.
The thing I found interesting about it was that they made a point, unless I missed it, they made a point of not even mentioning the town or the location till way later.
Correct. Yeah,
and I think it was not
mentioned where it came from.
Yeah,
but
I thought his backpack was gigantic, which I thought was rather interesting. But
Yeah, so just a little few things about Roddy Piper. First of all, we're both big wrestling fans, and I'm going to say it right now, and we'll get to it throughout the thing. I think that John Carpenter really got the most out of Roddy Piper here. He really did it. It's a really solid and really understated performance in a lot of the movie.
Well, and I think one of the things that, and I don't know if this was something intentional or he said, "Hey, let's play on Roddy Piper's strengths," but he really played like he didn't have a lot of lines early on.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where obviously hasn't he passed away?
Yeah, he passed away a while ago.
But it was one of those.
2016,
it's one of those things, and I know if you look him up on IMDb, his post wrestling career, he had a lot of like B movies and smaller stuff until he appeared on It's Always Sunny.
Yeah.
But like this was one of those things where, granted, I wasn't really watching him at the time. I'm really sad that we didn't see a lot of stuff post, because I think if this was the kind of thing a wrestler would have this kind of performance today, it'd be something that they would be thrust into more
roles. Yeah, I agree. And actually, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was watching this. That it's a shame that it was because he was really the first, at least that I know of, wrestler that really he didn't just do a movie. He attempted to make a go of it because he had one or two. He had Welcome to Frogtown, which I've never seen, but it's supposed to be like a B action movie, horror movie. But another one that I knew about, I had heard about. He actually did a pilot for a TV show. I think technically it was supposed to be like a movie that they hoped to lead into a TV show. He did it with Jesse the Body Ventura.
Oh wow!
Called Tag Team, and they were playing. The idea is that they were playing buddy cops, and so obviously that never made it. But I thought that was kind of an interesting tidbit. And if you're a fan of Sunny, but It's Always Sunny, but I've never seen he was in 2 episodes of It's Always Sunny, and his comedic timing, he's very funny in both of those episodes.
Yeah, he absolutely is, and it's the kind of thing where this movie starts with him kind of rolling into town, walking into town. He stops at the unemployment office, which I thought was interesting. I don't know how much with everything being on the internet nowadays. I don't think that stuff even exists. So for a younger listener, it's basically that's what you used to have to do if you couldn't find a job, probably to prove unemployment, kind of thing. It's been a while since I.
And one thing I kind of wrote down is that woman at the job employment office, she doesn't give two shits.
No,
she doesn't give a fuck.
And the thing I took from that part was that they wanted to come across that yes, she didn't care, but I think she didn't care because the unemployment rate, the amount of stuff they had for people was so low that nobody coming into that office was going to get a job.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and one thing I will definitely say about this movie, first of all, this is not a political podcast at all, but this movie, you need to know that John Carpenter has something to say from a political standpoint, and it's very clear. And really, it is in a lot of his other movies at the time too. Escape from New York. John Carpenter didn't exactly have good things to say about the Reagan era Reaganomics. He clearly had no respect for it.
No, and in more than a few points, not so subtly in a number of times in this movie, it seems like they make reference, because this was about the time in America where you were starting to see a lot of these jobs go overseas and a lot of plants closing down. And I think this movie's broken into two, kind of the first third and the second 2/3.
Yeah.
And so the first third's laying on a lot of this, because bluntly, I didn't look up anything on this before I went in. Yeah. I kind of knew it was probably something about aliens or something, but I didn't look up a lot of the stuff about it. So I was like, and so I was surprised to see all the political stuff.
Yeah, I knew just a few things. I knew that both aliens. I knew a couple other the most famous aspects of it, and then he eventually he gets some work at the construction site, and we meet Keith David. He gets a friend.
Yes, he meets a friend, and one of the things, and I forget where this comes up. I have this written in my notes. One of the things that really struck me, I don't know if they meant it this way, but Keith David always maintained that during the course of most of this movie, that he was a family man.
Yeah.
and he didn't want to get involved.
Yeah.
However, his family lives in Detroit.
Yes.
And this was clearly not Detroit.
Definitely not Detroit, no.
And I found that very funny that he was a family man and he was dedicated to his family, but it seems like he abandoned his family.
I got that right, like, because he mentioned, like, he hadn't seen him in a long time. And I'm like, oh, all right. You know? That's kind of the impression that I got, too. And then we went to, like, the most fancy as hell homeless camp. Like, that was a nice setup.
And one of the things we skipped, that was Homeless Camp 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because there was a Homeless Camp Night 1, and I think that was also the not so...
Oh, yeah.
And I thought this was good from a developing the movie standpoint, because they were setting, like, the pace of, hey, stuff's not great, but a lot of stuff wasn't great just in general in life at that time.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. But it's like, you're starting to see more and more of this, and... Yeah.
Yeah. And so just one thing I noticed, I thought just kind of interesting, choices. We starting to get we meet some of the characters at the homeless camp. You know, he gives dinner. I was a little surprised that, like, you know, not because it's a camp, just because from an ease standpoint, I would think that they would use paper plates and not regular plates. But I think I disagree, because I think what it is, bluntly, is a paper plate. Probably that many paper plates would cost too much. You know, fair enough.
The other thing, it seems, and I don't know if this was meant or not, but it also seems to be a take that, hey, it seems to be a negative take on everybody watching so much television.
Yeah.
Because I found it interesting at the end, because anytime they showed the TVs, whether it was I found it odd that the homeless encampment had TVs everywhere, but
yeah,
anytime you watch a TV, it was never a show. It was always a commercial showing some product to try and get people.
Yeah, or like the one time, I think they were showing baseball one time, like, there's that idiot licking his nuts again. I'm like, was he talking about the baseball player on TV? On TV? Because, damn, I don't like that player.
Yeah, and it seems like as they were going through this, like there's... The one line around this time I also wrote down. It seems like they were making a point that Roddy Piper's character did not want to get involved either.
No, yeah,
he basically everybody has their hard times. I follow the rules.
Yes,
was basically, I think what they were what his thought was is, if I follow the rules, I keep my head down and I work hard, I'm supposed to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, like, we also noticed, like, from, like, at a certain point on the TVs, the broadcast gets broken into, like...
Yeah, it's like cuts in, and a couple of the people just sort of get pissed, and they're like, "This happens every once in a while," kind of thing.
And it gives them headaches.
Yeah, which is bizarre. It kind of gives them headaches, which is odd, and it seems they're obviously setting the tone for what's going to come later.
Yeah. And then one thing, a guy I noticed, I didn't look him up on IMDb, but, like, the leader of the homeless camp, I did recognize him too.
The guy without the beard that they said could find stuff. Is that the guy you're talking about?
Yeah, like the guy that, like, you know, that they, you know, he kind of the leader in the church, the church or whatever.
Not the beard guy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, not the bearded crazy guy.
I recognized him from something. Yeah. I felt like I knew him from something, but it wasn't something that I was going to look up.
I'm like, he's familiar, but...
And they mentioned the word, hey, it's probably a hacker, which I found funny, because obviously I think that was a semi-new term, and I don't know why a hacker... they're hacking the TV. They're hacking the TV.
I don't think that's how hacking works.
I'm not too into the computer stuff, but that doesn't seem like how hackers work.
Yeah. And so, you know, I like when, like, you know, he goes, then, you know, things start to, we start to see a few pieces of evidence here and there that something's not right. And, you know, Piper goes to investigate the church. And I like at this point, like, clearly, like, because we have the blind reverend that's, you know,
we actually skipped over that, because that was an interesting part. We skipped over that part. I think it was between encampment 1 and 2 kind of thing. There was a reverend talking, and it didn't seem like he was animated, but he didn't seem like he was causing a disturbance or anything. But, like, the police came and ushered him away, which was which was bizarre.
Yeah, and then because Piper noticed that he was saying some of the exact same stuff as the guy then that broke into the broadcast on TV.
Yeah.
Later, and then Piper saw the head of the homeless camp talking to him. And going
yeah, and that was
at
that for the first night, and then they see them. Is that the point where Piper goes into?
He goes into the church
because he hears singing, but sees that the singing is fake.
Yeah, and I like the fact that at this point, you don't. I mean, you know, obviously in this movie there's going to be good guys and bad guys. You don't know which side these people are on at this point. You don't know, and so I like that. I like that. Like at that point, like okay, so is he discovering? Are these the bad guys, or I like that.
No, I like that a lot too because it seems like, and I think they partly set this up with Piper's character, and obviously his name's not Roddy Piper, but it's what we're going to call him. But it's one of those things where they set this up early by saying, "Hey, I'm going to keep my head down. I don't." Yeah, but also at the time, like. They didn't this wasn't like, they weren't showing some like apocalyptic wasteland where everybody was, they were trying to initially ground it enough that you believed what was going on.
Yes. I really, because I really dig the slow build. And as Piper's in the church, he finds, like you said, sees that there's a recording and stuff like that. And
I wrote down a bunch of sciencey stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he found, but he was getting the fuck out. He was out of there.
He didn't want to. I forget what movie I'm thinking. It was like basically he didn't want to get involved.
Yeah,
kind of thing. And the other thing I would like to make a note of here too. I should have mentioned this in the beginning. The music for this, this didn't get nominated for any Oscars, of course. This kind of movie wouldn't good enough, but they don't let movies like this go there. But for a lot of the science fiction award, the music of this was nominated for an award.
Oh, nice!
Because I don't know if you know one of the first things I noticed is that the bass line. We're probably 30 minutes in. That initial bass line from the beginning is still currently going.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not overwhelming or annoying or anything like. They kept it subtle, and I think that also just subconsciously kept your mind going with stuff going along.
Yeah, and so then cops come down on the night two or whatever. The cops then come down on the church and
before that, as Piper was during the day that day, as Piper was leaving, there was that chopper overhead.
Yes.
Which was peculiar at the time. I'll say. We'll get to this later. But at the time, I was like, well, why? If something bad's happening, how do they know something bad is happening here? But it was one of those things where the chopper was overhead. I think at that point, Roddy went to Keith David again, saying, "Hey, I'm finding some weird shit in that in the church. The singing's fake." And Keith David's like, "I'm
a family man.
I'm a family man." But then, as he's doing that, Piper also sees a bunch of the church people loading the boxes that he saw into a car to drive off.
Yeah. So then again, like this one, I'm not sure what side they're on.
No, and that was where I was too, is because it seemed like it was clear that our main character didn't want to do what they were saying. We're trained, main character syndrome. Okay, what the main character does is the good thing. You know what I mean? And so he's not for these people, so maybe these people are the bad people.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of thing. And so I thought that was an interesting part. But then that's when, as you were mentioning, then the cops descend on this homeless camp.
Yeah, and it's like, if you're watching this from the outside, my Lord, that has to, the cop, and in the context of the movie later, we understand, what was going on, later once we learn more in the plot. But the context of, an outsider not involved in, anything, they brought an army to this homeless camp.
Yeah, because there was there was an entire wall of cops with riot shields and
multiple helicopters.
The thing I wrote down too, and I think this was intentional, but the thing I wrote down too was that the people at the homeless camp did not seem surprised. You know what I mean? A lot of them they weren't fighting back. They were leaving. But none of them seem to be like, "Oh God, what do we do?" kind of thing. it seemed to be that this happens from time to time, that cops just come in and beat the shit out of everybody in the homeless camp.
Yeah. And so, Piper's bugging out, and as he's bugging out, he sees the Reverend just getting wailed on by like a dozen cops in red shirts. And again, I'm not going to lie, I'm like, this day and age, that's a little different.
And again, we're not a political podcast, but the thing, I should have looked this up, but obviously it was later. This was only probably 2 or 3 years before Rodney King, wasn't it?
Probably Rodney King was early. Because
this was
like very beginning of the 90s, like 91
because this was 88. So that's the thing I wrote down, is that if this had come out in 92, I guarantee that the studio would have made them take that scene out.
Yes,
kind of thing. And they didn't overwhelm it. They didn't spend 5 minutes there or anything like that. But
yeah. And so, then, he helps the guy. Then he gets into a, kind of place where he's hiding out from the cops. And we get the point, like, one thing I knew about this movie, and it's one of the famous things, I knew about the sunglasses, right? See, in this movie, he puts sunglasses on, and then it allows him to see things that other people can't see.
And before that, one of the things I looked up, and I ended up being wrong, that, that kid that when the preacher and some kid are there.
Yeah.
You know who that kid looked like?
Who?
Richard Dean Anderson.
Oh, really?
It looked exact, and it wasn't. It was some other random. I'm like, is that Richard Dean Anderson? And it was just, no, it's just the angle.
And because he would have been deep into MacGyver.
Yeah, you're right. He wouldn't have taken like the 10th person who has no speaking parts and They Live.
Yeah.
But so he hides out with, I think, some dude on drugs, and then a family who just sort of takes that kid in.
Yeah.
And then overnight.
We'll see later.
What's that?
We revisit the family later on.
Oh, we do?
We do.
Oh, they're in the yes. Okay. And remind me, I got something I found out about that scene too.
Yeah.
But then he goes to the church, and then the spot he hit when he was in the church before, there was like some spot that he broke through to see that everything was fake that we were trying. Yeah. He found one of the boxes.
Yep. And inside the boxes was sunglasses. Now, and sunglasses, as we're going to get to, is a kind of a classic component to this movie, because in a little, then once he leaves, he puts on the sunglasses, and the whole world changes. And
one of the things I wrote, obviously, the movie I'm about to say came out way later, maybe 10 years later, roughly 15 years later. Yeah. This reminded me of the part in The Matrix when Neo sees everything for the first time.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It reminded me of that moment when Lawrence Fishburne says that he's starting to believe.
Yeah.
He's basically, the world's opened up to it. For people who haven't seen it, it's like basically the sunglasses make everything black and white, but then he can see who the aliens are. But like underneath a sun, like let's say he looks at an advertising sign, it'll say, buy this product.
It would say like submit, reproduce,
stay asleep.
So basically it's really it's a very politically subversive movie. It has a lot to say about advertising, about the state, about how he felt the state of America was.
It felt like it was don't rebel, just go with the flow.
Yeah, just buy.
Yeah.
Doesn't
matter if you can afford it, just buy.
Yep. I like the look of the aliens, especially because you got to imagine the budget wasn't high on this. So I thought it looked cool. They look very when he looks at the aliens, everything about the body is the same, hair and whatnot. It's their face is now like a skull, like kind of freaky skull. It looks and I remembered that look.
Yeah, because that's the part. Because the next scene, he ends up going in. He ends up coming across a cop attacks him. Oh, I think before when he stumbles into some like bodega or what do you want to call it, some like shop or something. And he because basically, understandably, if you were to put those on for the first time, you would freak the fuck out.
Oh yeah. He's not handling it well. He's not too subtle. He needs to learn how to blend in. But really good one-liners though. That's like putting perfume on a pig.
No, and basically, and the other thing you see, which is a key plot point, is that all of these, we'll call them aliens.
Yeah.
All these aliens can talk to each other through their watches.
Yes.
So now he's instantly found, like, they describe him and he's instantly found out as like a, what do you call it?
Yeah.
They mention, hey, we have somebody who's woken up.
Yes.
You kind of thing. Which part of me thinks now, as I'm thinking this through in my head, I bet you when they mention wake up a few times during the original Matrix movie.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was just a subtle homage to this.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. Then we got, he gets, confronted by a cop. We have our first fight scene. A couple notes I put, clothesline, wrestling term. Oh shit, Roddy Piper has a gun. That's going to be a DQ for sure.
And one of the things and again, this isn't a wrestling podcast, but for people who don't follow wrestling, Roddy Piper was famous for never letting somebody else get over on him.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the same with this cop fight scene. My guess is that when they were describing the fight scene, they're like, Carpenter, like, okay, so the cop hits you here. He's like, nah, he's not doing that.
And one thing I found I did enjoy about Piper again is he's actually seems to be quite good at fight choreography.
Absolutely.
Because that's not like you may think that it's a skill that translates from pro wrestling to movies because pro wrestling being scripted, but not necessarily. It's a different skill set. And I've seen Piper actually in archival interviews talk about it. Not every wrestler who acts as as I say, not everyone has that. Every wrestler has had that skill. Roddy Piper definitely does. I'll give him that.
No, and I think one of the big things, and we're kind of talking wrestling here too, just because it seems to roll so much with this, and then it seems we're going to see later, is that one of the key parts of a wrestler who wrestlers think is a good wrestler, whether you hear Seth Rollins or any of the people now or before, and Undertaker on his podcast talks about this a lot, is that you have to be able to know how to sell it to an audience, which isn't part of this. But the other thing is you need to know how to not hurt your opponents.
Yes.
And I think that's the part that Roddy knows so well, because let's say that clothesline part you're talking about. How many times do you think he had to do that to that guy? Probably 100 at least.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
And they're filming all different angles to decide what angle they want to do. And so he needs to be able to do that, whether it's probably to the cop stuntman, kind of thing. But he needs to be able to do that in such a way that he doesn't hurt the guy. So.
And so then he gets he's starting to armor to get his armory up. He's got a shotgun now. He goes inside.
Willow says hi, everybody.
He goes inside what I believe is a bank, and I just wrote, he said it. He said the line.
And then this is the only part, and this is the part that for me, and I know TikTok's different for everybody, but this is the part that every once in a while will show up on TikTok for me. And I'm assuming Duke Nukem came after this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the origination of the line.
Because this is the line that everybody now attributes to Duke Nukem, just because They Live isn't nearly as popular as that video game.
Yeah, it's this movie.
And I think they changed the line in Duke Nukem slightly. They reversed the order. But.
Yeah, I have come here to kick ass and chew gum, and I am all out of gum.
Yeah, and I thought that what I loved about this, and this basically, he goes into the bank with a shotgun and the pistol that he took from the cop, and he just sort of puts the sunglasses on and said, "Fuck it, I'm killing everybody here who's an alien."
Yeah.
And so I thought it was unapologetic. It just sort of, it's what someone, let's just say, hard upbringing, good old-fashioned American would do in that, and like, okay, well, it's just time to kill them all.
Yeah, and so I wrote here for anyone, any of the gamers out there, right now, he just raised his wanted level to at least 3 stars. Maybe 4.
Yeah, it's like in GTA, he just walked into the convenience store that you can rob, and he just shot
he shot like 8 people.
Yeah. But I like they make a point, though, when he's looking through the glasses, if it's not an alien, he lets.
He moves on.
Yeah.
So I wrote, Piper's really perfect for this role. He does a good job of not just spewing his wrestling persona. If you were not familiar with him as a wrestler, his persona was the exact opposite personality. His persona was that he was never stopped talking, jabber, one-liners, jackass. So like completely different personality in his wrestling persona.
Yeah, and
Now he's trying to get away, I think.
yeah, exactly. He goes to get away. Had a brain fart there. And then he carjacks somebody, which I thought was a little weird.
Yeah.
he carjacks a lady at gunpoint.
Yeah, and here's what we have as I meant, Meg Foster, also known as Eva Lynn from Masters of the Universe, continuing, as you said, our ongoing.
Did you look up her on IMDb?
I don't think I looked up a bunch of her stuff.
I think she went and did some of the He-Man animated stuff later.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, but when I say later, I don't know if it was the Kevin Smith stuff. It was probably the
stuff that was done at post. They live. That's cool.
I think she was a big voice actress too.
Yeah, we'll have to do Masters of the Universe at some point, even though we both seen it.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
The thing I remember from Masters of the Universe was going to see it as a kid and going, okay, which of my toys are going to be in here? Yeah. And like in the first 30 seconds, it's like, yeah, everybody's fucking dead.
Yeah, I know. Everybody's dead. Eternity's lost. Genocide. Like, oh, I was brokenhearted as a kid.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, Ram Man's dead,
and everybody has guns.
Yeah, it's like I don't remember swords. Not like an Uzi.
Yeah.
I think what they were trying to get with this scene is that Roddy Piper, you suddenly see him. He's wiped. He's
wiped out.
He's wiped out, and they get with this later. It seems like that the glass is like they try and convey. It's almost like a drug.
Yeah, and it takes its toll on you after a while. Yeah. And it's clear to see. I think Piper had him on too long. We get to her house, and I was kind of curious. I think they meant the neighbors. I was wondering if there was going to be something with them, but there really wasn't, I guess. But when he's trying to explain things to her, I'm like, she thinks Piper's fucking insane.
Oh yeah, she's like,
I probably would too.
And basically, she's like, I like how she almost bluntly says, "I'm going to say whatever you want me to say."
Yeah.
But also, I think if this was a movie now, this scene could have gone into some very bad directions, and I'm glad they didn't do that. But
yeah, and then oh my gosh, she fucks him up. like Jesus, what a fall! She fucked him up.
Yeah. She bashes him in the back of the head. She mentions, I think, beforehand that she's some TV producer for something, which I think at the back of your mind you're supposed to think, because I forget if the people in the church told him or if he overheard it, but there's some point that's planted in your head, planted in the story a few different times that there's a signal that needs to be stopped, and everybody thinks it's from the TV station.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so, he kind of gets away, and then he's gonna go, and he goes and seeks out, Keith David again.
Yeah, and so he goes back to that construction site, to try and find Keith David. And actually, this is the part where I think I skipped ahead before. This is the part where Keith David mentions his kids.
Yeah.
And which is fine. He seems like, I'm sure Keith David would be a good family. It just, I still find it weird that his family now lives across the country.
Yeah.
Which is again, that's fine.
That happens.
But he mentions he also hasn't seen him for a really long time.
Yeah.
But I think part of it's probably distress that everything's bad kind of thing.
Yeah. And then we get to the alley, and Keith David gives us money, and this is I knew a couple of things. This was I hadn't seen this, but I don't know if you know, this is considered one of the most legendary scenes in all.
Oh, the fight scene?
Yeah, it is. It's the most legendary. I don't. For those of you that are South Park fans, there was at this point, one of the really young old episodes, past the We Killed Kenny stuff. But there was an extended fight scene between Timmy, the character in the wheelchair, and Jimmy.
Okay.
That was a shot-for-shot recreation of this fight scene.
Oh, that's cool.
It's
I probably had seen that fight, the South Park. I thought this scene was because I wrote down I don't know a ton of wrestling terms but there was a lot of stuff they mixed in. Yeah. But they also made the fight scene was so brutal.
Yeah.
But I like how they mixed it. And again, this is another part that I wrote in that I thought was interesting is that in wrestling, Roddy Piper never lets anybody get over on him.
Yeah.
But I think this is one of the few times he let that, because obviously it needed to be done story wise.
Yeah, so like in the world of actions, I had heard about this fight scene many times over. How like it's like 4 or 5 minutes long, just brutal, just excellent choreography. I know that I've heard many times over the years. This is considered in action films one of the great one-on-one fight scenes of that time.
And nothing against Keith David. I love him as an actor, but the stuff most of the stuff I've seen him in is post 2005 kind of stuff. So I haven't seen Keith David other than The Thing in his younger days. I didn't know he was capable of this, to be honest. Not to sound bad, but
exactly.
He holds his own with and obviously part of it's the choreography and stuff but it was so well done.
Yeah, and if you're like now, like if you haven't seen anything, you're like, who's Keith David? Well, he's also like right now. One of the things he's also known for he's the voice of the president on Rick and Morty. That's kind of one of the main things he's doing right now. He does that right now. So if you can't tie it, think of president and Rick and Morty.
It's also one of those things where look Keith David. If you're kind of like, hey, I kind of know that name. Look him up on IMDb, and you'll see like 45 movies that it's like, oh, he's in all of these.
Yes,
Yeah, he does for video game fans. He voices video games a lot.
Yeah,
so
yeah, he's done a lot of good stuff over the years. Yeah, another one-liner. I like life's a bitch and she's back in heat. They have a lot of good one-liners in this movie. Again, the writer, Carpenter, and the guy who only has one credit. They really did a good job with some of these one-liners. They knew the assignment.
And towards the end of the fight, towards the end of that fight scene, I don't think you can say who won, but like Keith David finally. And what's funny is the whole fight scene is about putting on sunglasses.
Yeah, I know exactly.
And Keith David does not want to get involved. He knows some shit's going on. But I think he's like, what is it, the red pill? Is the red pill what wakes you up?
One of them, I think.
Whatever pill it was, Keith Davis is like, I don't want any of the pills. I just want to go back and pretend everything's good.
Yeah.
Is basically what he wants, and he wants to be left alone, and he wants to earn some money and get back to his family. He doesn't want any of the rest of this shit.
Yeah. And then, because then, obviously once he finally does get the glasses put on him, he freaks the fuck out.
Oh, yeah. It was and another one. They didn't, dwell on it, as much as they did with obviously Piper because they already had done it once, but he freaks out. They realize they need to get underground, and so they
go to the hotel. Well, I just love them walking in a hotel room, and they're just both beat to shit.
No, I love how they did that, and obviously they didn't keep it that way for the rest of the movie because that would have been too much.
Yeah,
but I like how Piper's face was so swollen.
Yeah. So then, it's time to wake up the world. They, the guy, the leader of I think it was the leader of the homeless shelter kind of sees them and brings them into what seems to be a meeting of the minds of everybody.
What I liked about this too was that directors and writers very easily in these kind of moments can spend a lot of time and okay, how do we reintroduce this guy? Okay, we need to find out how this guy finds Keith David and Roddy Piper, and then suddenly you've spent 20 minutes on something you don't need to spend. Yeah. What I loved about Carpenter here is he knew he needed to keep this at about an hour and 30 minutes. It sure easily could have been something like we want to put all this lore into it, and suddenly it's 2.5 hours. He knew that this didn't need to be 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so in that meeting, that family is there.
Do you know who else is in that meeting?
Who?
A former heavyweight boxing champion.
Really?
See if
Which
you can
one?
He's also acted.
I don't know. Who?
He acted in the 80s.
Vander Holyfield.
He won a champ. He beat Sylvester Stallone in a fight.
Oh, Tommy Morrison.
Tommy
Jr.?
Morrison's. Oh, he doesn't have a speaking part.
Tommy Morrison. Wow.
I was looking up on the IMDb app. I'm like, I was curious who else was in this, and it's like Tommy Morrison. So I looked up on Google Tommy Morrison. They Live, and there's like just this picture of like what looks like a 16-year-old Tommy Morrison.
Hey, good for Tommy Morrison.
I think he's probably like, you probably literally have to like freeze frame it, kind of the way Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's old stuff when they started appearing in a crap ton of stuff before they got famous. I think it was one of those, but I thought that was funny.
Yeah. So like they switch out for the contact version, and now they get really armed up. They get grenades. I'm thinking like I'm smelling betrayal at this meeting. I thought that the homeless shelter guy was betraying them. I was wrong.
I didn't, but one of the things I wrote down was that Keith David and Roddy Piper are being awful fucking greedy with the ammo. Like they have a table set out and there's like probably 200 people in here. Keith David helps himself to a backpack and just starts throwing grenades in. I'm like, I know you guys are like the main character, but there's like 200 people here that need ammo.
Come on, you're being a little greedy.
And here's the part also that they introduced the contacts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the contest. I thought that was a nice, clever thing. I'm like, all right, cool, that's cool. I like it.
And I think it was a clever thing, but also it's like, hey, for stuff upcoming, we don't want to mess with.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the stuff coming up in a short period of time. A lot of stuff's going to be at night, and they're like, we don't
want to do sunglasses at night.
We don't want to do sunglasses at night, and it was hard. We don't want to have fight scenes and running around with glasses where they're going to fall off their head all the time when they're filming. And one thing. Actually, I won't say that because we're in spoiler territory.
Yeah.
I will say that I am proud of myself. Okay, because my brother here is the one who anytime these whodunit stuff comes up, 10 minutes into the movie, Charles knows exactly who's going to be the killer.
That's true.
As this happened, the first thing I wrote down is, how the fuck did the woman get away from the cops?
Yeah.
That's literally what I wrote. How the fuck did she get away from the cops, and how did she find this meeting?
Yeah.
What were the two things I wrote down? Which we find out later. There's a big reason.
There's a reason. Because, we saw Meg Foster comes back, as Ivan was mentioning. And it feels like just when Piper was getting somewhere, the ultimate, he gets blocked by, an all-out assault. And, everybody dies who's, not Keith David, Roddy Piper, or, Meg Foster.
What I also found interesting, now that you mentioned, I do remember that family, because they made a point of killing the kids.
Yeah.
which it's something that not a lot of directors have the guts to kill kids. As I'm saying that line, that's a weird thing to say, but the fact that the director Carpenter had no problem doing that, where it's obviously it's a faux pas to kill children in movies.
Yeah. So then Piper's they're fighting them off, and they finally get looks like they finally get the watch working. And they jump down the strange hole. Yeah,
basically, they got, if you think about it from a Nazi zombie thing, they got kind of cornered.
Yeah.
They had a watch they got from the previous thing. It wasn't quite working right, and they had a hole they jumped into.
Yeah, because we had seen some of the aliens disappear from time to time during the movie. And then, during the course, they're trying to, basically, they're now looking for the signal. We get a little bit where some of the aliens are talking about their plans, their their goals, and I don't know if you caught it, but did you catch the year that they're basically they're gonna be ready to have everything by 2025? We're all fucked.
Yeah, and again, not to get political, but I watched this the day after the election. We're recording this in early November, kind of thing. And so I watched it the day after Trump won, which is all fine. Hope everybody does well and all that. But I just found it kind of interesting that's hey, starting in 2025, I'm like, oh, yeah, fuck.
Yeah. So
the other thing I thought was out of place, but I loved it, was that as they were walking down, they meet that guy from the homeless camp.
I called him crazy conspiracy guy.
I called him beard guy.
Oh, yeah, I like it. Yeah.
They walk past those two guards that go, yay, we got him, and then they high-fived. I thought that was very...
That was wholesome.
It was.
That was really wholesome, I thought.
Yeah, and so, it's basically, you're wondering where the hell and this is where... it didn't lose me, but as they're going through some of the floors, they show they're in space, maybe? I didn't quite they were going through different floors, and like, hey, here's a thing where they can teleport to different places.
Yeah.
Which I thought was cool, but I'm like, oh, so they're in space now.
Yeah, it's
but then they ended up being in, like, I think what it's meant to be is I think you see space in the background
screen or something.
I think
like
it's
that.
meant to be like a viewer or something.
That's kind of what I think as well. So they end up getting taken to where where like the broadcast is, and all hell breaks loose, and they're fighting to get to the roof so that they can just blow this up, turn off the signal, which would allow everybody to see.
And I also found it funny at this point is that Roddy Piper is obviously he wants to do that, but he also really wants to find that girl.
Yeah,
because
Yeah, he's really, really focused. What turns out, it does not turn out that that was not a good idea.
Let's just say they kill all the people on the broadcast, and then they're fighting their way. They realize the signal's on the roof. They fight their way to the roof, and then as they're going up, Keith David, it's too bad he didn't win that fight because they didn't show it. But I believe he got shot in the back of the head. He got a
headshot from Meg Fox, who was betraying him. Who, there's a confrontation between her and Piper at the end. Piper, he destroys the signal. He takes it. Piper dies, and this is the point where I had seen before. Not when Piper dies, because I had not actually visually seen Piper. It then goes to the little 30 seconds, whatever. I'll mention you see people around the world starting to see the aliens and like really the shot that I had seen was probably on HBO was what was it? The girl in the middle of having sex with a guy, and then she suddenly looks at the guy, and the guy is an alien, and then the movie ends.
That was really funny, but I also here's what I thought, and I could. What I'm about to say, I could be completely off. Part of me wonders if what's the director again? I don't know. Why.
John Carpenter.
Part of me wonders if John Carpenter was told he had to have nudity in this.
Oh yeah, totally.
I think he was told that he was required to have nudity, so he's like, okay, it's going to be this, and it's not going to be gratuitous. It was kind of gratuitous, but I think he was like, okay, here's how I'll.
Yeah, he's not that. Yeah, so, so that's how you see like the world wake up, so to speak, and then just kind of leave it open-ended from there, which I thought was a very great way to end the movie.
So I think I know where you're going, but we would both recommend this to people, right?
Oh yeah, this is good. This is a diamond for me for sure.
If this ever shows up. If you don't want to rent it, I completely understand. But if this ever shows up on like a Netflix or a Peacock or whatever streaming service you have, do yourself a favor and watch this. Even though if you listen this far, you're going to know what happens. I don't think that's going to matter. There's so many few sci-fi movies that came after this that were so influential. I think after watching this, I'm not saying, but The Matrix, for example, was so inspired by this movie.
Yeah. Exactly, I agree. It's definitely worth a watch. When I was in college, so I never took any of these, but like there used to be now, especially with the creator, a little bit problematic. But there used to be a lot of like college courses on like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, stuff like that. It would not surprise me if classes, or at least portion of classes, maybe in film classes or political science classes, have looked at They Live because of the political nature. Because a lot of the themes are resonant today, especially in terms of consumerism, buy, stay asleep, no matter which side they are.
What I liked about it too is they brought it on subtly.
Yeah.
And by the time they were really pushing it in your face, they had kind of built up. They had built up, some credence with you or whatever the word I'm looking. They built up some favor with you, and so if they had done this with like the first 30 seconds of the movie, they were just plastering this in your face. It would have had it. You would have lost it initially.
Yeah.
For me, this is a diamond. Also,
What level of diamond are you?
I'm going to say 4.5 just because partly it might end up being a 5, but we're so early on this. I don't know if I want to do a 5 yet, but it is.
Yeah, no, I'm a 4.5 as well. I thought this was real. I thought it was really, really good, really well done. They really he really used Piper, I think, effectively. Diamonds. It's definitely a diamond 4.5 for me.
Yeah, and So that's going to be it for this one. One of the things I want to mention is that we meant to mention this at the beginning. We have now set up Facebook, Twitter, YouTube accounts for this, so feel free to... I don't know where you're listening to this at. I'm not smart enough to figure where people are listening at it from. But follow those, like us, all that, fun, normal stuff. And just the name of the podcast, Diamonds and Duds.
Yep. Next time, tune in as we're going to keep this wrestler in a sci-fi movie train going just for one more. As we're going to be watching and seeing whether or not will history repeat itself. Can we get another truly great wrestler performance as we look at the Titan of acting, Hulk Hogan himself in Suburban Commando?
Just ask him. Just ask him. He's the best of it, the best of everything. I have no doubt this is going to be a 5-star diamond.
All right, guys. See you next time.
Have a good one.